Detective Jonah Sterling slammed the case file on my desk and said 3 words that destroyed me. "It's over, Quinn." I stared at him, my hands shaking, my throat tight. "You're closing the investigation." He nodded, his face hard. "There's no evidence. Your ex-wife is clean. The money's gone and we can't prove she took it. I'm sorry, but we're done here." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the desk. Instead, I just sat there, numb, watching him walk away. $300,000. My life savings, my parents' inheritance, everything I'd worked for, vanished into thin air. And the woman who took it, my ex-wife Camila Reeves, was walking free with a smile on her face. The police had given up. My lawyer said I had no case. Everyone told me to move on. But I couldn't. Because 2 weeks after Jonah closed the case, I found something in a storage unit I'd forgotten about. A leather-bound journal buried in a box of Camila's old belongings. Her diary. And inside those pages was every detail of her fraud, written in her own hand. My name is Quinn Ashford, and this is the story of how I brought down the woman who destroyed me. I met Camila Reeves 6 years before everything fell apart. I was 32, working as a software engineer for a tech startup in Austin, Texas. She was 29, beautiful, charming, and seemingly perfect. We met at a coffee shop near my office. She was reading a book on investment strategies, and I made a joke about day trading. She laughed, and that was it. We talked for 3 hours. Within 6 months we were engaged. Within a year we were married. Everyone said we moved too fast, but I didn't care. Camila felt like the missing piece I'd been searching for. She was smart, ambitious, and passionate about finance. She worked as an investment consultant, helping small business owners manage their portfolios. She talked about money the way artists talk about painting, with reverence and excitement. I trusted her completely. That was my first mistake. About 2 years into our marriage, Camila suggested we combine our finances. She said it would be easier to manage investments, to plan for our future, and to build wealth together. I hesitated at first, but she was so convincing. She showed me spreadsheets, projected returns, retirement plans. It all looked perfect, so I did it. I transferred everything into joint accounts that she managed. For the next 3 years, everything seemed fine. Camila handled all our finances while I focused on my career. She told me our investments were growing. She showed me quarterly statements that looked impressive. I never questioned her. I was too busy working, too trusting, too blind. Then, about 8 months ago, cracks started appearing. Camila became distant. She worked late constantly, took phone calls in other rooms, and seemed stressed all the time. When I asked what was wrong, she blamed work pressure. I believed her. One night, I came home early and found her crying in our bedroom, surrounded by papers. When I asked what happened, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I think we need to separate." I was stunned. "What? Why?" "I'm not happy anymore," she said. "I need space to figure out who I am." Within a week, she moved out. Within a month, she filed for divorce. I was devastated, confused, heartbroken. But I thought it was just a painful breakup. I had no idea what was really happening. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. Camila's lawyer sent over a settlement proposal that seemed fair. She'd keep her accounts, I'd keep mine, and we'd split shared assets down the middle. I signed without much thought. I just wanted the pain to end. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I tried to access our joint investment account to transfer my portion back to my personal account. The login didn't work. Called the bank. They told me the account had been closed 3 months earlier. All funds had been withdrawn. My blood went cold. "What do you mean withdrawn? How much was in there?" The representative checked. "The final balance before closure was $312,000, sir. All funds were transferred to an external account." I couldn't breathe. $300,000. My entire savings. My parents' inheritance they'd left me when they died. Money I'd spent 15 years accumulating. Called Camila immediately. She didn't answer. Called 10 more times. Nothing. I drove to her new apartment and pounded on the door. No response. Finally, I called my lawyer. He reviewed the divorce settlement and delivered the crushing news. The agreement states all joint accounts are split as they exist at the time of filing. If the account was already closed, technically there's nothing to split. You signed away your claim to any jointly held assets. But she stole my money. Shouted. She emptied the account before filing. Prove it, he said quietly. Can you prove she took it fraudulently? Couldn't. I had no access to transaction records, no statements, nothing. Camila had controlled everything. That's when I went to the police. Detective Jonah Sterling took my case reluctantly. He was in his late 40s, tired eyes, a face that had seen too much. He listened to my story, took notes, and didn't look optimistic. Do you have any evidence that your ex-wife committed fraud? He asked. She emptied our account right before divorcing me, I said. Isn't that evidence? Not necessarily. If it was a joint account, she had legal access. Unless you can prove she forged documents, lied about the account status, or deliberately deceived you for financial gain. It's a civil matter, not criminal. She did deceive me. I insisted. She told me our investments were growing. She showed me fake statements. She planned this. Jonah sighed. Then we need to find those fake statements. We need paper trails, communications, anything that proves intent to defraud. Do you have anything like that? I didn't. Camila had been meticulous. All our financial documents were digital, stored on her laptop, which she'd taken when she moved out. I had no copies, no backups, nothing. Jonah opened an investigation anyway, but I could tell he didn't think it would go anywhere. He was right. For 2 months he investigated. He interviewed Camila, who claimed she'd invested the money legitimately and lost it in bad trades. She showed him account statements that supposedly proved losses. He couldn't find any evidence of fraud. Finally, he closed the case. The day Jonah closed the investigation was the worst day of my life. I sat in that police station, listening to him explain that without evidence, there was nothing more he could do. Camila had covered her tracks too well. I'm sorry, Quinn, he said. But sometimes people get away with things. That's just how it is. I left the station feeling hollow. Everyone had given up. The police, my lawyer, even my friends were telling me to move on. But how do you move on when someone stole your entire life and faced no consequences? Became obsessed. I spent every free moment searching for evidence. I created spreadsheets tracking Camila's social media posts, looking for signs of wealth she shouldn't have. I drove past her apartment late at night, watching for anything suspicious. I called old colleagues from her work, trying to find someone who knew something. Nothing. She was too careful. Weeks passed. My obsession started affecting my work. I couldn't focus. I missed deadlines. My boss called me in and said if I didn't get it together, I'd lose my job. That's when I realized I was destroying myself while Camila lived her life without consequences. I decided to start letting go. I began clearing out the last remnants of our marriage, things stored in a small storage unit we'd rented years ago. And that's when I found it. The storage unit was full of boxes I'd forgotten about. Old furniture, holiday decorations, random belongings from our marriage. I was planning to throw most of it away. I opened a box labeled Camila's Books and started pulling out old textbooks, novels, and binders. At the bottom, wrapped in a plastic bag, was a leather-bound journal. I almost tossed it without looking, but something made me pause. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Camila's. Neat, precise, methodical. The first entry was dated 4 years ago. Started the long game today, it read. Quinn is perfect. Trusting, stable income, and completely clueless about finance. He'll never see it coming. Phase 1. Gain complete financial control. My hands started shaking. I flipped to the next entry. Convinced Quinn to merge accounts. He was hesitant, but I showed him projections and talked about building our future. He signed everything. Now I have full access. I kept reading, page after page, entry after entry. It was all there. Every step of her plan, written in excruciating detail. How she'd created fake investment statements to hide the money she was siphoning. How she'd opened secret accounts in offshore banks. How she'd planned the divorce timeline to maximize her legal protection. She'd documented everything. Her entire fraud laid out like an instruction manual. And I was holding it in my hands. I sat in that storage unit for 2 hours, reading every page. The journal contained 4 years of entries. Camila had started planning this from almost the beginning of our marriage. She'd never loved me. I was a mark, target, a source of money she could systematically drain. She wrote about me with cold detachment. Quinn asked about the investment returns today. I showed him the fake fidelity statement. He believed it immediately. Sometimes I feel bad about how easy this is. But then I remember what I'm building for myself, and the guilt fades. She detailed every transaction, every lie, every manipulation. She wrote about setting up shell companies to move money. She wrote about consultation fees she charged to herself through fake businesses. She wrote about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands where she'd hidden most of my money. And she wrote about her exit strategy. 6 more months, and I'll have everything I need. Then I'll file for divorce, claim the investments failed, and walk away clean. Quinn will never prove anything because I've been so careful. By this time next year, I'll be living in Costa Rica with enough money to retire early. The final entry was dated 2 weeks before she asked for the divorce. Almost time. I've run the numbers 100 times. Everything is perfect. Quinn suspects nothing. This is going to work. I closed the journal and just sat there stunned. Had it. The evidence everyone said didn't exist. Proof of premeditated fraud, written in Camila's own hand. I called Detective Jonah Sterling immediately. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice tired. "Quinn, I told you the case is closed." "I found something," I said. My voice was shaking. I found her journal. She wrote everything down. Every step of the fraud. "It's all here." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" I explained about the storage unit, about the leather journal, about the entries detailing her entire scheme. Jonah was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Bring it to the station. Now." I drove 90 miles an hour across Austin, the journal sitting on my passenger seat like a bomb. When I arrived at the station, Jonah was waiting for me in an interrogation room. I handed him the journal. He put on gloves and started reading. I watched his expression change as he flipped through the pages. His eyes widened. His jaw tightened. After 20 minutes, he looked up at me. "This is incredible," he said. "If this is authentic, it's a full confession to wire fraud, money laundering, and a dozen other crimes." "It's authentic," I said. "That's her handwriting. I can get samples to verify it." Jonah nodded slowly. "We'll need forensic analysis. We'll need to authenticate the dates. We'll need to trace every transaction she mentions." He looked at me seriously. "Quinn, this changes everything. But you need to prepare yourself. This is going to be a long process." The investigation was reopened immediately. Jonah assembled a task force. Financial crimes investigators, forensic accountants, handwriting experts. They treated the journal like the Rosetta Stone of white-collar crime. The handwriting analysis came back first. 3 independent experts confirmed the writing was Camila's. They compared it to documents from our marriage, from her work, from the divorce paperwork. Perfect match. Next came the financial investigation. Using the journal as a roadmap, investigators traced every transaction Camila had mentioned. They found the shell companies. They found the offshore accounts. They found fake consultation fees she charged to our joint account, money that went straight into her personal accounts. They found everything. The journal didn't just describe fraud. It was a detailed confession with dates, amounts, and methods. Every entry provided a lead. Every lead revealed more evidence. Within 3 weeks, investigators had built an ironclad case. They'd recovered transaction records, bank statements, and communication logs that corroborated every single entry in that journal. Jonah called me into the station to update me. "We've got her," he said. "This is one of the most well-documented fraud cases I've ever seen." She basically wrote a how-to guide for financial crimes. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we arrest her," Jonah said. "And then we get your money back." The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but Jonah told me about it later. They'd tracked Camila to a luxury apartment complex in downtown Austin. Apparently, she'd been living quite well on my money. When officers knocked on her door, she answered wearing expensive yoga clothes, holding a green smoothie. She looked confused when they showed her the warrant. "What is this about?" she asked. "Camila Reeves, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and theft," Jonah said. He told me her face went white. "That's ridiculous. You already investigated this. You found nothing." "We found your journal," Jonah said. He told me she actually stumbled backward like she'd been punched. "My what?" "Your diary. The one where you documented every step of defrauding your ex-husband. The one where you wrote, and I quote, 'Quinn will never prove anything because I've been so careful.' Turns out you weren't careful enough." Camila tried to say something but nothing came out. They arrested her without incident. When they searched her apartment, they found more evidence. Fake documents, additional journals detailing other schemes, and proof that I wasn't her only victim. She'd defrauded at least 3 other people over the past decade using similar methods. The case made local news immediately. Investment consultant arrested in elaborate fraud scheme. My phone started ringing. Friends I hadn't heard from in months, colleagues, even my boss. Everyone wanted to know if I was okay, if I was getting my money back. Camila's lawyer tried everything to get the journal thrown out. He argued it was obtained illegally, that it violated privacy rights, that it couldn't be authenticated. Nothing worked. The journal had been in a storage unit rented under both our names. I had legal access. The handwriting was verified by multiple experts. The entries were corroborated by independent evidence. It was admissible. When Camila realized she couldn't suppress the evidence, her legal strategy changed. Her lawyer started talking about mental health issues, about how the stress of her job had caused a breakdown, about how she'd made mistakes but didn't have criminal intent. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. "Your client kept a detailed journal documenting premeditated fraud over 4 years," the prosecutor said during a hearing I attended. "She wrote about how easy it was to deceive the victim. She planned her exit strategy down to the month. This wasn't a mistake or a mental health crisis. This was calculated, intentional theft." I sat in the courtroom gallery, watching Camila avoid eye contact. She looked smaller somehow, less confident. The woman who'd seemed so powerful, so untouchable, now looked scared. Good, I thought. Now she knows how I felt. The prosecution offered a plea deal. 15 years in prison, full restitution, and cooperation in recovering the stolen funds. Camila's lawyer advised her to take it. She refused. "I'm not going to prison," she told her lawyer loud enough for me to hear. "We're going to trial." The trial began 4 months after Camila's arrest. The prosecution's case was devastating. They entered the journal as evidence and read entries aloud in court. They showed transaction records that matched every detail Camila had written. They called forensic accountants who explained exactly how she'd moved money through shell companies. They called her former clients who testified that she'd used similar schemes on them. And they called me to the stand. The prosecutor asked me to describe our relationship, our marriage, and the moment I discovered the money was gone. I told the truth. All of it. How much I'd trusted her. How completely she'd deceived me. How finding that journal felt like discovering proof that my entire marriage had been a lie. When the prosecutor asked how the fraud had affected me, I looked directly at Camila. "She didn't just steal my money," I said. "She stole years of my life. She made me doubt my judgment, my intelligence, my ability to trust anyone. She turned our marriage into a crime scene and walked away like I was nothing. Camila looked down at the table. She couldn't face me. The defense tried to paint me as a vindictive ex-husband exaggerating claims. They tried to suggest the journal entries were exaggerated thoughts, not actual plans. But the evidence was overwhelming. Every transaction she'd written about existed. Every lie she'd documented was verifiable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When the jury came back, the courtroom was packed. News crews, journalists, legal observers. The case had become something of a sensation. A cautionary tale about trust and fraud. The judge asked the jury foreman if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor." "On the count of wire fraud, how do you find it?" "Guilty." "On the count of money laundering, how do you find it?" "Guilty." They went through all 17 counts. Guilty on every single one. I watched Camila's face crumple. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder, but she shook it off. She looked at me across the courtroom, and for just a second, I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. As the bailiff led Camila out in handcuffs, she tried to say something to me. I couldn't hear her, but I read her lips. "I'm sorry." Too late, I thought. Way too late. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. I gave one statement. Justice was served today. I hope this case reminds people to protect themselves financially and never give anyone complete control over their money. Trust but verify. That soundbite made national news. Within days, I started getting calls from talk shows, podcasts, and even a production company interested in making a documentary. Everyone wanted to hear about the diary that cracked the case. 3 weeks later, we returned for sentencing. The prosecution recommended 25 years. The defense asked for leniency, citing Camila's previously clean record and her cooperation in asset recovery. The judge wasn't sympathetic. "Ms. Reeves, you engaged in a sophisticated premeditated scheme to defraud multiple victims over many years. You betrayed the trust of people who loved you and believed in you. You documented your crimes with disturbing pride and showed no remorse until you were caught. This court finds your actions reprehensible." He sentenced her to 22 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. Full restitution to all victims. Forfeiture of all assets. I sat in the gallery and felt something I hadn't felt in almost a year. Relief. It wasn't satisfaction or joy or revenge. Just relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying finally lifted. After the sentencing, Detective Jonah found me in the hallway. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Honestly, exhausted," I said. "But also grateful. You reopened the case when you could have just let it stay closed." Jonah shook his head. "You did the work, Quinn. You found the evidence. You didn't give up. That journal was a 1 in a million break, but you're the one who found it. What happens now?" "Yes. Now the asset recovery team works on getting your money back," Jonah said. "It won't be fast, and you might not recover everything, but you'll get most of it." He nodded. "Thank you for believing in me." The asset recovery process took 8 months. Federal agents worked with international banks to trace and freeze Camila's offshore accounts. They liquidated her assets, including the luxury apartment, her car, and investments she'd made with my stolen money. In the end, I recovered $287,000. Not everything, but close. More than I'd expected. The day the wire transfer hit my account, I sat at my computer and stared at the balance. It was real. I'd actually gotten my money back. Most people in my situation never do. I was one of the lucky ones. But the money felt different now. It wasn't just savings anymore. It was a reminder, a symbol of survival, of fighting back against someone who'd tried to destroy me. I decided to do something meaningful with it. I contacted a lawyer and set up a foundation to help victims of financial fraud. I called it the Second Chance Fund. It would provide legal assistance and financial counseling to people who'd been scammed by people they trusted. I donated $50,000 to get it started. Then I put another 100,000 into a trust that would grow and fund the foundation for years. The rest I kept. My safety net. My fresh start. News of the foundation spread quickly. Within weeks, I was contacted by fraud victims from across the country. People who'd been scammed by romantic partners, business associates, family members. Each story was heartbreaking. And each one reminded me how lucky I was to have found that journal. About a year after Camila's sentencing, I received a letter. It came from the federal prison where she was serving her sentence. The return address made my stomach turn. I almost threw it away without opening it. But curiosity won. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. The same neat, precise handwriting from the journal. Quinn, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to ask for your attention or your forgiveness. But I need to say this. Sorry. Truly deeply sorry. Not because I got caught, but because I finally understand what I did to you. I've spent this past year in therapy, trying to understand how I became the person who could hurt someone the way I hurt you. The therapist says I have issues with empathy, with seeing people as real instead of opportunities. She's right. When I look back at that journal, I don't recognize the person who wrote those things. He's cold, calculating, cruel. I wish I could say I wasn't that person, but I was. I destroyed your trust, your security, your faith in people. And for what? Money I'm never going to see or enjoy. It wasn't worth it. Nothing was worth what I did to you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see my mistakes now. I see the damage I caused. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone different. Someone better. I hope you've found peace. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Camila, I read the letter 3 times. I didn't know how to feel about Camila's letter. Part of me wanted to believe it was genuine, that she'd actually changed, actually felt remorse. But another part of me, the part that had read her journal, couldn't forget how calculated she'd been. How she'd written about feeling bad but choosing the money anyway. Was this letter real? Or was it another manipulation? I showed it to my therapist during our next session. Yes, I'd started seeing a therapist. After everything with Camila, I'd realized I needed help processing the betrayal and rebuilding my ability to trust. What do you want to do with this? My therapist asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to respond. Part of me wants to burn it. What would responding accomplish? She asked. Thought about it. Maybe closure. Maybe letting her know I've moved on. My therapist nodded. You could do that. Or you could recognize that closure doesn't require her participation. You've already gotten justice. You've recovered your money. You've built something positive from this experience. You don't need her validation or her apology to move forward. She was right. I didn't need to respond. Camila's guilt wasn't my responsibility. Her redemption wasn't my project. I'd already done the work of healing. So I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, and left it there. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, my life wasn't about her anymore. 2 years after Camila's arrest, my life had transformed completely. The Second Chance Fund was thriving. We'd helped over 100 fraud victims get legal representation and financial counseling. Several had successfully recovered stolen assets. Others had at least found closure through the legal process. I'd become an advocate for financial fraud awareness. I gave talks at community centers, wrote articles about protecting yourself from financial manipulation, and even consulted with law enforcement on investigating fraud cases. The experience that almost destroyed me had become the foundation for something meaningful. I'd also started dating again. Her name was Kelsey, and she was a teacher I'd met at a community event. She was funny, kind, and refreshingly transparent about everything, including her finances. We took things slowly. I was honest with her from the beginning about what I'd been through, about my trust issues, about why I needed to see tax returns before getting serious. She didn't run. She understood. Everyone has baggage, she said. Yours just happens to come with a federal case number. 6 months into our relationship, Kelsey moved in with me. We kept our finances completely separate. We split bills down the middle. We were transparent about every expense. Felt healthy. If real. One night, we were having dinner when Kelsey asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that journal?" Thought about it. All the time, I admitted. Camila would still be free. I'd still be broke. And she'd probably be scamming someone else. "Do you think she kept the journal because she wanted to get caught?" Kelsey asked. I'd wondered the same thing. Maybe subconsciously, I said. Or maybe she was just arrogant. She thought she was too smart to get caught, so she kept a record of her brilliance. "That's disturbing," Kelsey said. "It is," I agreed. "But it's also what saved me." Her arrogance was her downfall. Kelsey reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad you found it. I'm glad you got justice. And I'm really glad you didn't let what she did make you bitter." "I almost did," I admitted. There were days I wanted to give up. Days I wanted to burn everything down. But something kept me going. "What?" Kelsey asked. "Spite mostly," I said with a half smile. I refused to let her win. I refused to let her take everything from me and walk away smiling. Kelsey laughed. "Spite is underrated as a motivator." She was right. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just refusing to let someone break you. Refusing to give them the satisfaction of destroying your life. Living well, building something better, and moving forward. That's the revenge that lasts. Around this time I got a call from a true crime podcast. They wanted to do an episode about the case. They called it The Diary of Deception. I agreed to be interviewed. The episode went viral. Millions of downloads. Spawned articles, YouTube videos, even TikTok recreations. People were fascinated by the idea that someone would document their own crimes so thoroughly. The podcast brought unexpected attention. I started getting messages from people who'd been through similar situations. Some had been scammed by romantic partners. Others by business associates or family members. Almost all of them felt alone, ashamed, and convinced no one would believe them. I responded to every message. I shared resources. I connected people with lawyers and support groups. I told them my story not to brag about winning, but to show them recovery was possible. One message particularly stood out. It was from a man named Tyler who'd been defrauded by his business partner. "I've been trying to investigate my partner for 2 years," he wrote. "But I can't find any evidence. The police won't help. My lawyer says I don't have a case. I'm about to give up. Then I heard your podcast episode. How did you keep going when everyone told you to quit?" I wrote back. "I kept going because giving up meant letting her win. I kept going because I knew the truth, even when no one believed me. And I got lucky. I found evidence most people never find. But even if I hadn't found that journal, I'd still know I tried everything. That's what mattered." Tyler wrote back a week later. "I took your advice. I hired a forensic accountant to review my company's books. We found discrepancies my partner thought he'd hidden. I'm filing charges next week. Thank you for not letting me give up." Messages like that made everything worth it. The pain, the obsession, the year of hell I'd lived through. If my story could help even one person get justice, it meant something. 3 years after the trial, I received another letter from Camila. This one was different. Order. Less apologetic. More reflective. "Quinn, I don't expect you to read this. But I wanted to update you. I've been working in the prison library, helping other inmates with legal research. Ironic, I know. A criminal helping criminals understand the law. But it's given me purpose. One woman I helped just got her sentence reduced because we found errors in her trial. Another is working on an appeal that might actually succeed. I'm using the skills that I once used to hurt people to help them instead. I'm not trying to redeem myself in your eyes. I know that's not possible. But maybe I can redeem myself on my own. There's a victim support group that meets here. Joined it. We talk about the people we hurt, the damage we caused. I will talk about you a lot. About how I destroyed your trust. How I stole years of your life. The group leader asks us to imagine what we'd say to our victims if we could. I'd tell you that you were right to fight. Right to pursue justice. Right to refuse to be a victim. You beat me, Quinn. Not just in court. You beat me by refusing to let what I did define you. That's the real loss for me. Not the prison sentence. The knowledge that you survived me. That I couldn't break you no matter how hard I tried. I hope you're doing well. I hope you found happiness. You deserve it. See. I put the letter down and felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness. Not even sympathy. Just acknowledgement. She was right. I had survived her. And that was enough. One Saturday morning, about 4 years after everything started, I was at the farmer's market with Kelsey when I saw someone I recognized. Detective Jonah Sterling. He is retired now, but he still lives in Austin. Quinn, he called out. We shook hands. I introduced him to Kelsey. This is the detective who reopened my case, I told her. Jonah waved off the praise. You did all the real work. I just followed the evidence you found. We chatted for a few minutes. Then Jonah said something that surprised me. You know, that journal case changed how we investigate financial fraud. We now specifically ask victims to check storage units, old devices, anywhere an abuser might have kept records. You'd be surprised how many criminals document their crimes. Really? Yes. Absolutely. We've recovered evidence in 3 other cases using that same approach. Turns out a lot of fraudsters keep records. Some for practical reasons, some because of ego. Either way, it's helping us catch them. I felt a strange sense of pride. My nightmare had created a template for justice. Other victims were getting helped because of what I'd been through. How's the foundation going? Jonah asked. I told him about the Second Chance Fund, about the people we'd helped, about the awareness campaigns we'd launched. That's good work, Jonah said. You turned something terrible into something valuable. Not everyone can do that. After he left, Kelsey squeezed my hand. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. I was okay. Maybe better than okay. I was actually happy. 5 years after Camila's arrest, the case reached a strange epilogue. A law school professor contacted me. He wanted to write a paper about the diary for a journal on criminal evidence. He called it Private Writings as Self-Incriminating Evidence, the Reeves Case Study. I agreed to be interviewed for his research. During our conversation, he said something interesting. The journal is fascinating from a legal perspective. Most criminals who document their crimes do it digitally, which can be encrypted or deleted. But your ex-wife kept a physical journal. Why do you think she did that? I'd thought about this question for years. I think she was proud, I said. She thought she was smarter than everyone else. The journal was her way of celebrating her own intelligence. She never imagined someone would find it. Do you think part of her wanted to be caught? He asked. Maybe unconsciously, I said. But consciously? Well, she genuinely believed she'd get away with it. That's what narcissists do. They believe their own superiority means they're untouchable. The professor's paper was published 6 months later. It became required reading in several law schools. My case was now being studied by future lawyers and investigators. Sometimes I get emails from law students asking questions about the case. I answered them all. If my experience could teach people how to recognize and fight fraud, I was happy to help. Around this time, I proposed to Kelsey. She said yes. We got married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. No big production. No joint bank accounts. Just 2 people who loved each other, building a life based on honesty and trust. 6 years after discovering the journal, I finally felt ready to close that chapter forever. The Second Chance Fund had grown into a thriving, self-sustaining organization, helping victims without needing my constant involvement. I'd shared my story enough times to feel emptied of it. I moved on. Or so I thought. Then came one last letter from Camila. Quinn, this will be my final message. I'm being released early. Good behavior, completed programs, and cooperation in financial crime investigations. I'll be out in 6 months. You deserve to know. I'm heading to Oregon to work at a non-profit that helps people rebuild credit. Yes, it's ironic. The one who ruined credit helping others fix theirs. But I'm grateful for a chance to do something real. I won't contact you again. I won't show up. You've built a good life, and you should be free of anything to do with me. But I need to say this once more. Thank you for fighting back. You taught me consequences are real. Your strength saved my life. I hope you're truly happy. Goodbye. Camila. I read the letter once and filed it away. Are you okay with this? Kelsey asked. Yeah, I said. And I meant it. Camila was no longer my villain, just someone I used to know. My life had grown beyond her shadow. 7 years have passed since Detective Jonah closed the case. And today I'm sitting in my home office, finally writing the truth. Kelsey is in the next room on the phone, and our daughter, Hope, is asleep upstairs. Her name a symbol of everything we refuse to lose. The Second Chance Fund just marked its 5th year, having helped over 500 fraud victims reclaim more than $8 million. We've changed laws, launched awareness campaigns, and given stolen lives a fresh start. None of this would exist if Camila hadn't betrayed me, or if I'd stopped when everyone insisted I had no case. People ask if I'm glad it happened. I'm not thankful for the betrayal, the pain, or the hopeless year I spent buried in doubt. But I'm grateful for who I became. I learned justice isn't always swift. Sometimes it requires patience, persistence, and blind faith. I discovered revenge doesn't have to be destructive. It can be rebuilding. That leather-bound journal Camila hid so confidently. It became her undoing. Her arrogance turned into evidence, her pride into proof. She thought she broke me. I didn't. She almost erased me, but I rewrote the ending. I became more than a victim. I became the author of my survival, and the architect of her downfall. Remember to hit the subscribe button.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching Karma, Payback, come full circle every week, we dive into tales of betrayal and poetic justice. Don't miss the next one. Tap the subscribe button and join the Revenge Squad.